Welcome to Let's Talk Global Business, the show in which we look at the economic and business trends connecting the world. I'm Sarah Murray, Managing Director, International Conference Board, the member-led global think tank that delivers trusted insights for what's ahead. Today, we're going to talk about skills, their importance, what they mean for business, and how new technologies like AI are upending the way we think about them. Joining me today from Brussels is Denis Pennel, Managing Director for the World Employment Confederation Europe. And joining us from Australia is Joshua Morley, Global Head of Artificial Intelligence, Data and Analytics, Acodis. Joshua is also a Global Responsible AI Committee member at the Adecco Group. Welcome.
Thank you for the invitation, indeed.
Thank you. Thrilled to be here to discuss a really important topic.
Indeed. So to better frame our conversation today, I'm going to ask both one big question. How do you think the way that businesses think about skills is going to change in the next 5 years? Denis, do you want to start?
Well, clearly, learning and development will become even more essential. I think that's clear. So this is really top on the agenda of business leaders and CEOs of companies. For me, learnability is the new motto, and skills, the new oil of well-functioning labor markets. So clearly, there is a revolution there to be made. Continuous, lifelong learning will become essential within the coming years, And in a way, this is the end of this, three boxes life model we had, where it was, about I learn, I work, I retire. This is over. We need continuous learning. That's clear. But we also need probably in the future to act faster. As you might know, we published recently a new strategic piece of research called The Work We Want. And we interviewed, business leaders from all around the world. And 80% of them are saying that talent planning has never been more difficult than it is today. And 78% admit that their company will not be able to train employees fast enough, to keep up with technology developments in the next 3 years. So clearly, we will have to deliver faster to become more efficient, in terms of learning and development. And for me, this is all related to dual learning schemes to be implemented, apprenticeship contracts, for instance, to make sure that the trainings are demand-driven, and also to develop probably more micro-learning schemes, short-term training schemes that can really deliver, fast and short.
Excellent. Thank you. Joshua?
Yeah, I think historically we've zeroed in on the skills required to perform a or a series of tasks because the degree of change for the mechanism of completing those tasks was fairly slow, whereas now we're having significant disruption. To use an example, the personal computer was deployed and adopted over the course of multiple decades. However, in our current and future landscape, I think the ability to adapt to a new technology and adopt the skills required will be far more important and vital.
If we just move slightly to kind of the current landscape, Joshua, how do you identify the biggest skills gap in your industry, and what do you do to fix that?
I think one of the benefits of being in the technology industry is our shortages very well publicized. AI, cybersecurity, digital transformation, and change management, to name a few. For example, a report on Australian companies showed that 90% of leaders plan to implement AI initiatives, but 48% of them say that they lack the staff with the AI skills, and that's their biggest barrier to success. So globally, I've seen a few figures from different sources, things like, we're 4 million cybersecurity professionals short, and 87% of organizations experienced at least one breach in 2023, with more than half of those resulting in costs over $1 million. I think that's a very believable number. So we've got very widely reported stats on the technology space. And I think the really important thing for me on how we can begin to address this is the collaboration between academia, government, enterprise, and startups. I think it has to be those four. I've seen regions and jurisdictions where, for instance, one region was just the government was just focused on startups for innovation, and it meant that the skills to adopt those innovative platforms were never distributed throughout the enterprises, or there was no planning for the upskilling of university students to adopt those technologies. It has to be a collaborative effort across those four entities.
And does your company work with schools, with universities and governments on that skill development?
Absolutely. So broadly across the world, we have many relationships in that space. I can speak to the Australian ones in particular, where we've worked across a number of different initiatives. So the Tech Start program was launched in South Australia, specifically looking at how we can enable and encourage more women to enter the data science space. And that was a collaborative effort between our kind of enterprise, the government, and academia. We have the Future Tech Talent Program, which is bridging the gap between university graduates and digitally enabled enterprises. Probably my favorite, and I'm a little bit biased because the initiative was my brainchild, is the AI Academy that we've developed collaboratively with Microsoft. Microsoft came to us and said very rightfully, AI is taking over. We need to equip developers with how they can leverage this technology to become more efficient and productive. I absolutely agree, and said in response that we also need to equip our leaders and our non-technical business people with the skills required to adapt and adopt this technology. So that resulted in this 4-course academy that's now trained over 16,000 professionals in 12 countries and over 30 clients of ours. With the most popular is the AI for Leaders, which is a training program for executives so that they can feel confident, adopting this technology and then encouraging their staff to do the same.
Yeah, because it starts from the top, right? There, a lot of role modeling is really important. And how can you already see how that's paying off for your business?
Absolutely. I mean, we've had fantastic feedback about that initiative in particular, the AI for Leaders. It's so successful, and we hear so much gratitude and success stories from all of those client executives that we've trained, that Microsoft is now expanding it across Asia with talks about a global rollout. I couldn't even qualify what the actual success of the program is because it's so far reaching. Once the executives and the leadership are comfortable with the risks and able to progress, it just propagates from there throughout all of the organization.
And do you see then with well-being of employees, do you see a connection there?
Absolutely. I think for me, technology is not only about productivity from a either an economic or a business motivation perspective, but the productivity is also a way of providing a more accessible environment, whether that be for young families with children, whether that be people with disability who would otherwise be excluded from being involved. The ability to depend on these technology innovations to bridge the gap, I think, is fantastic for everybody's mental health.
Let's not forget social partners and trade unions. And as you
Yeah.
might know from the employment and recruitment industry, and especially in Europe, we have established what we call sectoral bipartite training funds. So those funds are being managed jointly from the employer side and the trade union side. And of course, the financial contribution is made by the employers, but the purpose is really to first of all, to identify, the gaps in terms of skills, and then to implement very much demand-driven, training schemes for the agency workers to make sure that, again, they are meeting the expectations from the labor market. And I think this is something very specific to the HR services industry or the employment and recruitment industry, and the fact that we are very much demand-driven. Every day, we put, millions of people at work, we support them, and we know exactly, our role is to make the perfect match, if I could say, between the supply and demand of work. And of course, every day we face, job vacancies not being filled because we don't have the right candidates. So anything related to training, skilling, reskilling that we are implementing is indeed demand driven. This is because we know there are shortages of labor here and then at the very local level that we can, really deliver some effective training schemes. But trade unions are also important. And again, this is really a best practice I think we have in Europe. We have 7 training funds from 7 different European countries there, really deliver. Just to give you an example, in France, I think every year it's about 500 million euros being invested, by this training fund, and allowing, hundreds of thousands of agency workers being trained. Once again, usually some rather short-term training schemes, not months, but more could be a couple of days, couple of weeks, because at the end of the training, the purpose is for those workers to jump immediately on the job.
Fantastic. And that actually leads me to my next question, Denis. So you said this is very demand driven at the moment. How does AI play a role in also helping companies or the social partners spot and build the skills that they'll need in the future?
Well, I think before looking to the future, companies should look at the current situation. To be honest, I'm always surprised how little some companies know about their own workforce, the current workforce, and the skills mapping exercise, of their current workforce. And there we have beautiful AI supported tools, to do this mapping. And there is some applications or companies doing that. I have two come to my mind. There is NeoBrain or TechWolf. Those are companies, helping, employers indeed to map their current workforce and the skills related to their workforce. So first of all, I would say my first advice would be know your own workforce, where your current skills are, and then you will be able to identify the skills gaps that you might face, within your own company. And then, of course, I think, there is a lot of public information available nowadays on the labor shortages. We know which are the sectors that are short in skills. So this is also where AI can help us. Just compiling all those public data and to make sure and make them more specific to your own industry, to your own sector, to your own region, or even town, maybe. And so you really have the understanding and the knowledge on where the skill shortage is and where you have to invest, of course, in terms of development. Then we have also a very good partner for the World Employment Confederation, which is called Lightcast, and this is their job. They are using AI to compile millions of data and information, and therefore also being able to map the main professions that are in shortage. And of course, well, we know them, and this is anything related to the health sector, to the hospitality sector, construction, transport and logistics, and jobs requiring STEM skills, and it's all about, nurses, doctors, can be waiters in restaurants, but also, electricians, welders, and IT developers. So we have the list of the current, skills that are lacking in the world of work, in the labor market. And again, AI can really help us, first of all, to understand the current situation and indeed to try to foresee what will be the skills needed in the future.
How do you see AI personalizing and learning and development for employees?
Well, that's a very important one indeed. And that's something we are already seeing and being used by this industry. It's essential, first of all, to individualize indeed the learning and development experience. There is this structural shift, within the world of work, or the need for the individualization of the employment relationship. And more people want, their job and their work to adapt to their private life, whether, constraints or personal choice. And work has to fit now with your work-life choice. It was the other way around, still probably 20, 30 years ago. We had to adjust to the working life. Now it's the other way around. People want their work to adapt to their personal choices. So very, very important. I think this is to set up some very personalized, and customized challenges and feedback, to be powered by AI. This will allow, better retention and engagement of the people. So clearly a key role to play there for the artificial intelligence. This is part of a broader scheme of the individualization of any, work-related experience. But of course, let's keep in mind that AI will definitely play a great role. My bet is that maybe within the next 5 years, we won't speak at all any longer about AI, because it will be everywhere, So it will be, AI will be the new electricity. And the same way when you switch on your TV or your laptop, you don't think, oh, there is electricity behind it. It's natural, it's obvious. It will be the same for AI. It will be everywhere. It will be for indeed improving the learning and development experience. It will be for our industry, once again, facilitating the matching and between the supply and the demand of work. So it will be everywhere. Of course, important to make sure that AI will be used in an ethical way, and this is why also the World Employment Confederation came up with some, principles on the ethical use of AI in terms of recruitment and placement. But yeah, it will be there, and of course, also, addressing the issue of the skills that will be needed in the future. Clearly, well, first of all, we need to make sure that people will be able to work with AI. So anything related to training on the use of digital of the digital tools and instruments, that will be essential. That's something we really need to ensure. And I fully agree with Joshua there. It seems, companies and business leaders are a bit stuck and lagging behind. They don't know how to train their workforce, fast enough to ensure that people will be able to make the most of those new technological developments. And because I strongly believe that jobs will not be replaced by AI. People without the savvy of using AI will be replaced by machines and robots and so on. So it's really important to educate and to learn the workforce, using these new technologies. This is essential for me. And AI, of course, again, will be, one of the main one. Again, because it will be everywhere. It will be, behind every device's software we are using. So clearly, we need to train the workforce on AI.
Thank you. Joshua, anything you want to add to that?
I agree completely. I think it was really well put. I'd add an additional example of personalized, I think, long running learning. Something that we've seen historically is that your learning and development is primarily attached either to an institution that you're attending or through your workplace. A change in paradigm that I really welcome is something like the career co-pilot that the Adecco Group is developing with Microsoft. And this is the idea that you have a personalized AI that follows you for the duration of your career. It understands all of perhaps the education that you do throughout high school and university. When you join a role, it understands what the role is and any additional upskilling that you take through certification throughout the course of that role. But when you leave and join a new company, it carries on with you, and you can ask anything from, I'm a solutions architect in the technology space, but I really want to move into operational management. Based off all of the history and the accumulation of experience and knowledge that I've had over many different roles or institutions, what is complementary? How can I shift into that new place? And having that breadth of knowledge across your entire career will be absolutely valuable. And then incorporating, personalized AI agent coaching systems or educators means that you can incorporate that multi-perspective education paradigm I talked about before and tailor it specifically for the goals of the individual, external to what their current role in an organization is. And I think that's a fantastic opportunity. And once again, touching that kind of equity of access and the diversity perspective, it means, especially for neurodivergent individuals such as myself, that tailoring the education program for their unique needs is leveling the playing field like we've never had before.
Can you give me some examples of how that could help with neurodivergence?
Yeah, the education system, I can speak from my own personal experience in this. Is I was not a very successful high school student. In Australia, it's still very standardized. I was given some accommodations for my examinations, but for the most part, education is tailored for the 95% of students, as it should be. When you can't cater to everybody, you should focus on the majority for sure. But it meant that people at the top or bottom ends of that bell curve were not having their needs catered to or met. And it can look very different. In my particular experience, it was a very strange combination of being highly capable and overachieving in some components, but then in other components falling well below the average. Having a personalized AI coach who understands that a lecturing kind of environment where it's just absorbing information through hearing isn't suited to my neuroarchitecture, and that I could then have a personalized AI that I could discuss the content with. I could challenge some things, I could query it, and they could respond. It would mean that I get a far better outcome from the learning objectives than a type that doesn't suit me.
That's really fascinating as well, because you're right, the learning environment is very different, isn't it, for people? So some people are fine in big lecture halls and they can focus, whereas there can be neurodivergent people that would find that quite overwhelming, and need kind of smaller groups. So having that AI coach to kind of also raise awareness of what's the best way to learn can be enormously helpful. And again, I think if leaders can also understand those different types of learning, that also means that there's different strategies that can be tailored to get the best out of the individuals. We're going to take a short break, and please note that you can access content around the topic of skills on the Conference Board website. When we come back, we'll continue this discussion on skills, looking at it from regional perspectives.
Are you a DEI executive with a global scope or covering Europe and Asia? Or are you a global business leader curious to learn more about similarities and differences in approaches to DEI? Then join us at the Asia-Europe DEI Dialogue 2024 on the 4th of December. This event offers a unique opportunity to deepen dialogue on diversity, equity, and inclusion between executives leading DEI across the globe. It will bring together participants from across both regions to gather insights and share successes and challenges for both individuals and companies. To discover more, visit tcb.org/events/DEI-Asia-Europe.
Welcome back to this conversation with Denis Pennel and Joshua Morley. We're talking about skills and their implication for business. And I want to move the discussion now to get your perspective on regional differences. So let me ask you both what you think are the key differences that you see between how businesses in the APAC and the Europe region are thinking about skills. Joshua, do you want to start?
Absolutely. I think I'm really keen to hear Denis' perspective. And from what I've experienced, I think a big part is in APAC, it's typically government-led with involvement from the industry and academia. Some examples of this might be the Digital Skills Initiative in Australia. And in European countries, the ecosystem is more businesses working within a landscape of regulatory frameworks with an emphasis on that public and private sector collaboration. So I think a big focus is for businesses is largely on what their respective primary industries are. So Europe's engineering supremacy kind of shines through in their approach to skills development through something like Germany's dual education system, augmenting schooling with vocational or practical work experience. In APAC, it seems like there's a large focus on digital and tech skills, such as Singapore's Skills Future or South Korea's AI national strategy, which aims to train 100,000 AI experts by 2025. And for context, some estimates place that there are currently only 150,000 AI experts globally. So it's a very ambitious mindset that they have, target that they have.
And Denis, how do you see it for Europe?
Yeah, well, first of all, let's be clear that we don't have one global labor market. Clearly, labor markets are still very much, organized and managed at the national level or even sometimes at the local level. So let's be careful about trying to have some, regional perspective, even at the national level. Sometimes it's complicated. As you might know, I live in Belgium. If you look at the differences between, the northern part and the southern part of Belgium, there is some very large discrepancies, in terms of labor shortages, level of unemployment, and so on. So that would be my first comment. But then trying still to answer your question on the regional differences, clearly also, as Joshua mentioned, this is all linked to the overall economic structure of the countries of the region. And for instance, of course, in Europe right now, we are very much looking at the green transitions, and this is still a priority of the new European Commission. So anything related to green skills or the greening of the skills landscape is really important. I think for also Europe, digital and tech skills are really important, and the STEM dimension, which is also something probably for North America. But even more, I would say, probably in Europe, soft skills are really important. I don't like the word soft skills. I prefer to speak about human and social skills because we are well advanced, economies. where we have already, the hard skills in place. I think this is what will make the difference in the future. The fact that people need to be open-minded to learning, as you said. So what I call learnability, key concept, but also any additional human and soft skills such as leadership, creativity, empathy, critical thinking, very very important, emotional intelligence. That would be essential, I would say, probably for the developed part of the world. And then, of course, if you look at the maybe the global south, as it is now being called, this is also where, let's be clear, the workforce of the future will be coming from. Because looking at the demographic evolutions, we know that mostly in the northern part of the world, the working population is going to shrink in the future, and the reservoir, of the new talent and the young talent will be coming from the global south. So there is still some skills to be developed in terms of hard skills and soft skills also, because there in this part of the world we are also still facing a high level of informal work, so people not being formally contracted and employed. And of course, this will be reducing the access to training for those workers. So and that's something the World Employment Confederation is very much, fighting for, to reduce informality, to turn those people into, formal jobs and positions, so they can have access to skilling, because again, that will be the workforce of the future, to be honest.
What's your advice, Joshua, for companies that are just starting to focus on a skills-based approach to talent development?
I think we've already touched on focusing on a mindset shift, but also, and what I mentioned in that I really like about the Skills Future initiative is recognizing the value of the experience and expertise of your older cohorts, and figuring out how you can adapt that to leverage it for kind of the future of work in the world that we're heading into. Something I'm deeply involved in the Rotary ecosystem, and the knowledge transfer between somebody like myself, who is very cutting edge in terms of my technical knowledge, but the skills, experience, and knowledge that can be brought from small business owners, as an example in Australia. There's something really dangerous about that overlap. Somebody that has the intuitive knowledge and the experience to be able to drive something forward based off decades of practical application of those skills, being equipped with an advanced knowledge, or at least the ability to tap into advanced technologies, I think is extremely powerful. And that, I think Singapore's really found one of the keys to unlocking great economic potential with this, because a lot of other countries, and we're seeing reports of this now, where the big tech firms are being accused of being ageist and trying to phase out their older cohorts. I think there's so much missed potential there. So something that I think is a great place to focus for companies is bridging that gap between your most experienced and knowledgeable experts and the current technology or tooling landscape, equipping them with the state-of-the-art tools to really derive value out of that experience. And then on the flip side, coupling the innovative, frontier pushers, the younger people who don't have the same depth of experience over a significant portion of time, but have the right mindset to be able to adapt and move with pace, move with velocity, equip them with the knowledge and experience and perhaps mentorship of those other people. I think those two things in tandem could unlock a lot of potential.
Interesting. Anything you want to add, Denis?
Yeah, well, first of all, clearly the skills-based approach, when it comes on the one hand, about recruitment, but also talent development, this is clearly the way to move forward. Let's be clear. I think companies now are starting to realize this is what they have to implement. Unfortunately, it's not that easy. And this is quite a big revolution mindset for companies. Most of them have organized their workforce, on jobs, positions, responsibilities, tasks rather than skills, actually. So they really have to reinvent or reshape, their HR policies. To be honest, there is also sometimes a labor law issue behind it, because in some countries, when you want to recruit someone and you're drafting the labor contract, this is less about skills. This is once again about positions, responsibilities and so on. So you really need to translate, positions, qualifications with regard to the skills needed. So easier said than done, but clearly this is the way to move forward, because this is the way to increase inclusion in the labor markets, to make sure that people that do not have the right degree for the job for the position you are trying to recruit, but that's the way to expand the talent pool. And there again, this is a way to solve this labor shortage issue that we have, looking at skills rather than people coming from this university or having this degree. So this is the right way to move forward, but it's not as simple as it might look at first glance.
Just to add to that, I think that gave me a really good inspiration for the 3 points that I'd recommend, which is starting with that clear understanding of what the skills are going to be needed, doing, as Denis mentioned earlier, taking stock of what skills you have and forecasting what will be required, making sure you have the collaboration mechanisms in place, especially businesses earlier on their journey will really have to leverage the knowledge and the capability that partnerships can provide. And finally, focus on that blend of learning formats, gamification of learning, expert live sessions, self-guided learning, and then lunch and learns are all fantastic mechanisms to drive engagement and adoption.
Excellent, thank you. I was just about to ask you for your key kind of wrap-ups and takeaways, but I think you've just answered it, Joshua, unless there's anything else that you want to add. But those three, I think, really do shine through based on the conversation that we've had today.
Yeah, I'd just add re-emphasis on that adaptability will be vital in skills development. Embrace the new paradigm of personalized learning experiences. I think that'll be incredibly powerful to have a specifically focused personal coach or educator that focuses on your needs. And the collaborative ecosystem with the blend of different learning formats to really drive those learning outcomes.
Yeah, indeed. And Denis, your key takeaways for today?
Yeah, but to build on what Joshua just said, I think the world of work is becoming more complex. And for individuals, sometimes it's quite a challenge to find your way and to build your career over there. So anything related to career management services that we can provide to individuals, this is also essential. Yeah? And as you know, we like to position our industry as being, talent agents. Yes, people, individuals need to be supported in to navigate this complex world of work. And one topic we haven't touched upon, I'd just like to mention it because this is essential when it comes to skills. Again, if you want to bridge the talent gap, we need also to develop cross-sectoral mobility, so helping people to move from one sector to another one, from one industry to another one. So anything related to transferable skills is also essential. Trying not to train people so much for sticking to one industry, but anything that can facilitate cross-sectoral mobility also will be important, and therefore transferable skills also, I think that's an important topic to look at for the future.
Thank you, Joshua and Denis. It's been a fascinating conversation. I could continue on and on and on, but I know that we're tight for time, and that brings us to the end of this episode of Let's Talk Global Business. We'll be back next time with a focus on a new topic. As I said, you can find more content on skills and listen to the entire catalogue of podcast programming from the Conference Board by visiting our website at conference-board.org. Thank you, Joshua and Denis, for sharing your insights with us. And until next time on Let's Talk Global Business.